Hello, this is Swami Pranava, and I'm just giving you a little introduction to Vedic astrology here. So I have a chart, and I want you to look at the chart and just see the different signs of the zodiac. So you have Aries here is the first sign, then Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, Virgo, Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius, Capricorn, Aquarius, and Pisces. So those are the 12 signs. And this is my chart, and you can see that ascendant, that's the sign that was on the horizon when I was born, is in Taurus, the second sign. So the ascendant becomes the first house. So that's the number one here. So you can see like Taurus is the first house, and then Gemini is the second house, and so on around like that. They're numbered, right? And so we say I have the moon, MO, and Mercury, ME, in the first house. I have the sun in the second house, no planet in the third house or the fourth house. I have Jupiter in the fifth house, Rahu in the sixth house, Saturn in the seventh, no planet in the eighth, ninth, 10th. I have Mars in the 11th, and I have Ketu and Venus in the 12th. Okay, so each of the planets has a personality, and we'll cover that later. But for now, just to know that each of the signs is ruled by a particular planet. And so Mars rules Aries and Scorpio. Venus rules Taurus and Libra. Mercury rules Gemini and Virgo. The moon rules Cancer. The sun rules Leo. Jupiter rules Sagittarius and Pisces, and Saturn rules Capricorn and Aquarius. Okay, so those are the signs and the planets that rule the signs. And then we see that some of the planets are friends and some are neutral, some are enemies. So we'll also cover that. And then there's a topic of aspect. Aspect means like Saturn aspects the ascendant here. So that means Saturn aspects Moon, Mercury, and also the ascendant, because Saturn aspects 7 houses away. So if you count from Saturn, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, you get back to Taurus, which is aspected by Saturn. So that means that Saturn aspects these planets that he influences, the moon, Mercury, he influences the ascendant. Okay, we'll talk about which planets are friends, which are enemies later. And the other thing, there's a nice introduction that I put on the shared folder, and you can get the link to that and just download those files. And I'm going to share that now. So come back here. And so this is the Jyotish Intro course 2024, brief summary of classes 1 to 10. So the 9 planets or grahas are listed here. And you can see that there are characteristics of each planet. The sun is self, ego, government, and so on. So you can read through that. So I suggest you just read through this. And then there's 12 signs of the zodiac, and it tells the ruler. Like I said, Aries is ruled by Mars. Mesha is the Sanskrit name, so it gives the Sanskrit name first. And then it tells you a little bit about each sign. So Aries is where the soul is new, and so on. So you can read through this document, and it will give you a basis for understanding the signs. And in this part of the video, we are going over the relationships between the planets. So I mentioned that planets could be friends, they could be neutrals, they could be enemies. And so this chart shows you, first, the sun has 3 friends, Moon, Mars, and Jupiter. And these 4 planets actually are, you might say, like a group. of friends. So you'll notice that if you look at the moon, he considers the sun his friend and Mercury his friend, but he actually considers Mars and Jupiter as neutrals. So the moon is not as close to Mars and Jupiter as he is to the sun and Mercury in terms of friendship. But the sun considers Moon, Mars, and Jupiter to be friends. And Mercury would be a neutral. And you see the moon considers Mercury a friend. And then enemies of the sun would be Venus and Saturn. And then if we look at Mars, he considers Sun, Moon, and Jupiter to be his friends. So that's consistent with the sun's view that Moon, Mars, and Jupiter are friends. So Mars agrees with this grouping of four. You see that the sun, you might say, prefers. Mars also prefers that same grouping of the four friends. So this indicates that Mars is quite close to the sun in terms of friendship, and Moon is not in exact agreement with the sun because Moon has his own, you might say, way of thinking. Moon is the mind. Sun is like the individual self or the consciousness, the soul. It also represents ego. And so there's positive and negative aspects to all the planets. And the moon is not entirely in agreement with the sun about who is a friend. And Venus and Saturn are considered neutrals, but Mercury is considered an enemy. And then if you look at Mercury, he considers the sun and Venus as friends, and Mars, Jupiter, Saturn neutral, and Moon as enemy. So that's interesting because the moon sees Mercury as a friend, but Mercury sees the moon as an enemy. So that's quite a difference between Moon and Mercury, their view of who is a friend and who is not, who is an enemy. And then Jupiter considers Sun, Moon, and Mars to be friends. And again, see, that's a grouping of four: Jupiter, Sun, Moon, and Mars. Jupiter, Sun, Moon, Mars. Same view as the sun. So Mars and Jupiter are in accordance with the sun, but the moon is not entirely in accordance. He considers the sun a friend, but he's not so close to Mars and Jupiter. And then you see Venus considers Mercury and Saturn as friends and considers Mars and Jupiter neutral, but the sun and moon are enemies. Saturn considers Venus and Mercury a friend, Jupiter a neutral, and Sun, Moon, and Mars as enemies. So you can see that Saturn has quite an opposite view of the sun because he considers the sun his worst enemy. And so he doesn't like the friends of the sun either, the moon or Mars. He considers Jupiter just a neutral. So out of that grouping of four, Jupiter, Sun, Moon, and Mars, who are all usually friends, except from the moon's perspective, Saturn disagrees. He doesn't go along with those friends, but he rather chooses Venus and Mercury. Rahu and Ketu are friends with Mercury, Venus, and Saturn. Mars they consider neutral, and he's enemies of the Sun, Moon, and Jupiter. Well, that's to be expected because Sun, Moon, and Jupiter are the three Sattvic planets. Rahu and Ketu are both Tamasic. Okay, so that's a little bit about the planets. I hope it helps you.